Here's a truth most people don't want to hear. You probably stopped making progress months ago. You just didn't notice. Progress in the gym doesn't end with a loud crash. There's no alarm, no warning light. It fades quietly. So quietly that by the time you realize something's wrong, you've already lost a season of training. Maybe two. And the worst part? You were still showing up, still sweating, still telling yourself you were putting in the work. That's the trap. Effort feels like evidence. If you're tired, you must be training. If you're sore, something must be happening. If you showed up 5 days this week, you must be ahead of most people. But none of that guarantees you're actually moving forward. The gym doesn't reward attendance. It rewards adaptation. And adaptation is rules. Rules that most people break without knowing it. This video is about recognition. 12 signs that reveal when your training has quietly flatlined. When you've hit a gym plateau and mistaken it for maintenance, or worse, for progress. These aren't obscure symptoms. They're patterns hiding in plain sight. You'll probably recognize yourself in at least a few. That's the point. Before we start, this is general training information, not medical advice. If something feels medically off, talk to a professional. But if you're healthy and still stuck, one of these 12 signs is probably why. Let's get into it. Number 1, your numbers haven't moved in months. Same weights, same reps, same position on the rack, week after week. You call it maintaining. But let's be honest, you're not maintaining. You're stuck. You've just gotten comfortable enough with the routine that it doesn't feel like stagnation anymore. This is the most obvious sign of a fitness plateau, and somehow the easiest to ignore. People will cherry pick one lift that went up 6 weeks ago and use it to avoid confronting the bigger picture. Everything else is flatlined. Bench hasn't moved. Squat hasn't moved. Row hasn't moved. But because the sessions still feel hard, because you're still breathing heavy and leaving sweaty, you assume something's working. It's not. Here's the mechanism. Your body adapted. Fast at first, then slower. And now, without a deliberate increase in training stress, it has no reason to change. Early progress is generous. Intermediate and advanced progress is not. You can't coast into it. You have to measure, track, and manipulate variables, load, volume, frequency, exercise selection. If you're not doing that, you're guessing. And guessing eventually stalls. Most people misread this as a genetics problem. I'm just not built for strength. But more often, it's a planning problem, a tracking problem. If it's not in a logbook, it didn't happen, and you can't improve what you don't record. The correction isn't complicated. Pick 2 or 3 progress indicators for your main lifts. Weight on the bar, reps at a fixed load, quality of technique at the same weight, and track them. Periodization exists for exactly this reason. Manipulate variables before they stall on their own. If your numbers haven't moved in months, your training didn't pause. It stopped. You just didn't notice. Number 2, you're always training hard, but never stronger. Every session feels like battle. You grind. You push. You leave the gym wrecked. And somewhere in the back of your mind, you're proud of how much you suffer, until you realize that suffering hasn't translated into anything measurable. Lifts haven't gone up. Physique hasn't changed. You're working harder than ever with nothing to show for it. This is where people get confused. Effort feels like proof. I train hard becomes a main argument for why results should be coming. But effort is not the same as an effective training dose. You can destroy yourself with poor exercise selection, bad progression schemes, or so much accumulated fatigue that your body never has room to adapt. You can train brutally and still spin your wheels. Here's what most people get wrong. They think more intensity is always better. Going to failure on every set. Pushing past technique breakdown. Turning every workout into a test of willpower. But meta-analyses on failure training show it doesn't automatically beat stopping a rep or too short, especially when fatigue cost is factored in. You can get similar results with less destruction if you're smarter about it. The misinterpretation, I need to push even harder, that usually digs the hole deeper. You don't need more pain. You need more progress. The correction principle is simple. Redirect hard into productive. That means consistent proximity to failure, not collapse. It means preserving technique. It means accumulating high-quality volume instead of dramatic-looking junk volume. Some people are addicted to the feeling of effort because it's immediate. Progress is delayed. That's the psychological trap. And if you're living in it, your strength isn't going anywhere. Number 3, your sessions feel random instead of purposeful. You walk into the gym without a clear plan. You look around, find what's open and start there. Maybe chest today, maybe arms, maybe whatever feels right once you've warmed up. By the end, you're tired. So it must have worked, right? Wrong. What you did was survive a workout. You didn't build toward anything. This is one of the most common causes of a training plateau. Sessions that feel productive but don't connect to each other. No planned progression. No repeatable structure. Just chaos dressed up as flexibility. I like to switch it up is often code for I don't track anything and I don't have a plan. Novelty gets mistaken for sophistication, when really it's just randomness with good branding. Real progress requires repetition. You need to stay with key movements long enough to get better at them, then change variables with purpose, not on a whim. That's what periodization is. Intentional manipulation, not reactive improvisation. The people who confuse the muscle are usually just confusing themselves. The common excuse? My body adapts fast, so I have to shock it. That's marketing language, not physiology. Your body doesn't need to be tricked. It needs to be challenged in ways it can actually respond to, over time, with consistency. The fix is straightforward. Anchor your training around a few repeatable movement patterns and treat accessories as garnish, not the main course. Have a structure. Follow it long enough to see whether it's working. Random training creates random results. That's not poetry. That's just math. Number 4, pumps feel better than performance. You know the feeling. Skin tight, veins showing, muscles swollen in the mirror. You leave the gym feeling like you grew an inch, and by the next morning, it's gone, but it felt so good that you'll chase it again tomorrow. This is one of the sneakier ways workout progress dies. You start judging session quality by how pumped you got, not by what you actually achieved. Cables, angles, high reps, constant tension. It all feels productive because the feedback is immediate. Meanwhile, your strength markers quietly stall. Your compounds haven't moved. But you're not paying attention to that because you're too busy chasing sensation. Here's the trap. The pump is a powerful reward signal. It's visible, immediate, and satisfying. Performance improvement is slow, boring, and often invisible for weeks. So your brain gravitates toward what feels like progress, even when it's not. You end up training for mirrors instead of adaptation. The misinterpretation is classic. If I got a pump, I grew. But the pump isn't proof of muscle growth. It can correlate with effort. Sure, it doesn't guarantee stimulus. Here's something most people don't think about. Some muscles pump easily, like arms, and some barely pump at all, like rear delts for many lifters. If you only chase the pump, you bias your training toward what already feels rewarding. You avoid what's hard, and your weak points stay weak. The fix isn't to eliminate pump work. It's to tie it to progression. More reps at the same load. Same reps at a higher load. Better control. Shorter rests with equal performance. Make the pump earn its place. Otherwise, you're just inflating tissue for an hour and calling a workout. Number 5, you're constantly tired but never improving. You're drained, not just after training. Before it, sleep doesn't feel like it restores anything. Warm-ups feel heavier than they should. Your mood is flatter. You're in the gym, doing the work, but there's nothing left in the tank, and nothing to show for the effort. This is what fatigue without payoff looks like. You're accumulating stress faster than your body can recover from it, and instead of adapting, you're just sinking. Performance drops. Progress disappears. And all you have left is the exhaustion. The mechanism here is well documented. When training stress chronically exceeds recovery capacity, performance suffers. In its extreme form, this becomes overtraining syndrome, persistent fatigue, declining output, and mood disturbances that don't resolve with a day off. But even in less severe cases, the pattern holds. If you never recover, you never rebound. The misinterpretation? I'm just not disciplined enough. I need to try harder. Often it's the exact opposite. You've been too disciplined, too consistent. No deloads, no rest weeks, no breaks. Here's the uncomfortable truth. Fatigue can feel like effort. When you're tired, everything feels harder. So you assume you must be working hard. But you're not building. You're borrowing against a body that already ran out of credit. The correction principle is simple but hard to accept. Treat recovery as a training variable. Deloads matter. Sleep consistency matters. Realistic volume matters. You cannot grind your way out of a hole you dug by grinding. If you've been tired for weeks and your numbers haven't moved, your body is telling you something. You're just not listening. Number 6, your technique is getting sloppier, not cleaner. Your reps used to be clean, controlled, full range. Now, more bounce, more body English, more just get it up. Somewhere along the way, small cheats became permanent fixtures, and now you can barely feel the muscle you're supposed to be targeting. This is form decay, and it's one of the clearest signs that your training has outpaced your ability to sustain it. You're working at a load or intensity level that your current skill can't repeatedly support, so your nervous system compensates. It finds easier motor patterns, shorter ranges, angles that let you cheat the weight up without earning it. This gets worse when you're fatigued. Chronic tiredness reduces coordination. Your brain doesn't want precision, it wants efficiency, so it takes shortcuts. And over time, those shortcuts become your new technique. The common misread is dangerous. I'm getting stronger because I'm using more weight. No, you're getting better at compensating. The muscle isn't doing more work. Your leverage is, and that's a dead end for both strength and muscle growth. Here's the truth most people ignore. Technique is a progress metric. If your reps are getting sloppy over time, you're not improving. You're leaking. You're spending motor control you haven't rebuilt. The fix involves rotating in what some coaches call skill sets. Lighter, cleaner, slower work designed to restore movement quality. Not as ego work, as investment work. Many plateaus are technique ceilings in disguise. Your muscles could handle more. Your movement pattern can't. Until you fix that, nothing else moves either. Number 7. You avoid exercises that used to drive progress. There was a time when your training was built around hard movements. Heavy hinges, split squats, barbell rows, movements that demanded everything from you. Now, those lifts have quietly disappeared, replaced by machines, cables, variations that feel smoother, easier, more refined. You tell yourself it's optimization, that you've matured as a lifter, that you only do what works for your body now. But if you're honest, you know what really happened. You got uncomfortable and found a way out. This is avoidance disguised as intelligence. The exercises that built you are the same exercises that expose you. And once progress slows down, exposure stops feeling like growth and starts feeling like failure. So you swap, you rotate, you listen to your body. And slowly, your training becomes a collection of things you're already good at. Sometimes there's a real reason. Fatigue might be too high. Your body might be protecting itself. But if your recovery is fine and you're still dodging the hard stuff, that's not wisdom. That's comfort management. The misinterpretation is seductive. I only train what I enjoy now. But progress rarely lives inside what you enjoy. It lives in the gap between what you can do and what you can't. And the only way to close that gap is to keep showing up to the movements that challenge it. The correction is simple. Keep at least one uncomfortable cornerstone in every training block. One lift that demands you show up and improve. One exercise that won't let you hide. Your favorite movements are often the ones that flatter you. The ones you avoid are usually the ones you need. Number 8. Recovery takes longer, but loads don't increase. You used to bounce back in a day or 2. Now it takes 4, 5. Your joints feel crankier. Soreness lingers. And yet, despite all the extra rest, your weights haven't moved. You're paying more, but getting less. This is a recovery to stimulus imbalance, and it's one of the most frustrating signs of a plateau, because it feels like you're doing a responsible thing. You're resting. You're not overtraining. but the math still doesn't work. You're spending more resources than you're earning back. Here's where people go wrong. They assume soreness equals productivity, that if they're still hurting days later, the workout must have been effective. But DOMS, delayed onset muscle soreness, isn't a reliable proxy for growth. Studies have shown it can occur without meaningful muscle damage and doesn't track well with actual adaptation. Some researchers believe a significant portion of that soreness may originate from connective tissue or fascia, not the muscle fibers themselves. The common misread is classic. I'm sore, so it's working. But more often, lingering soreness means you change something abruptly, overdid eccentrics, or push volume past what your recovery can handle. It's not a badge. It's a signal. The correction principle cuts against instinct. Aim for recoverable training, not training that wrecks you. Training you can repeat week after week without needing 3 extra days off, because repeatability is what builds muscle. Destruction just makes you tired. If your recovery is taking longer and your performance isn't climbing, your training isn't productive, it's just expensive. Number 9, you train more, not better. You added another arm day, then a pump finisher at the end of legs, then a few extra sets just to be safe. Sessions crept from 60 minutes to 90. Training days went from 4 to 6, and none of it moved the needle. This is volume inflation, and it's one of the most common responses to stalled progress. When things stop working, the instinct is to do more sets, more exercises, more time in the gym. It feels like effort. It looks like commitment, but it's usually just noise. Research does support training volume, specifically hard sets, as a driver of hypertrophy. But there's a ceiling. At some point, more volume stops helping and starts costing. It eats into recovery. It tanks performance. It turns productive training into accumulated fatigue. And when you're already in a plateau, piling on more junk volume is like shoveling sand into a hole you dug yourself. The misinterpretation is predictable. If I'm not growing, I must not be doing enough. But the opposite is often true. You're doing too much of the wrong kind, or you're doing moderate quality work in high quantities instead of high quality work in smart doses. High volume feels productive because it creates fatigue, but fatigue is not the goal. Adaptation is. And adaptation happens when the body has room to respond, not when it's buried under more sets than it can recover from. The correction isn't complicated. Cut the fluff. Keep your best sets. Make them more consistent, more focused, more intentional. Quality beats quantity almost every time. If your training got longer but your results didn't, you added noise, not signal. Number 10, you measure progress by sweat or pain. You left the gym drenched. Your legs are shaking. Tomorrow you won't be able to sit down without wincing. And somewhere in your head, that feels like success. You suffered. You earned it. The pain proves you worked. Except it doesn't. Sweat is thermoregulation. Pain is often just DOMS. Or worse, irritation. Neither one is a direct signal of muscle growth. You can sweat through a junk workout and stay dry through a productive one. You can be sore for days from a session that did almost nothing and feel fine after one that drove real adaptation. This is one of the most stubborn myths in gym culture, that suffering equals progress. No pain, no gain survives because pain is immediate, visible, and shareable. You can tell people you got destroyed. You can't easily tell them your progressive overload is dialed in. The science is clear. DOMS doesn't reliably reflect muscle damage magnitude. Hypertrophy can occur without any perceivable damage at all, and soreness tends to decrease over time as the body acclimates, which means feeling less wrecked can actually be a sign you're doing things right, not wrong. The misinterpretation is everywhere. I suffered, so I improved. But suffering can be completely unproductive. You can hurt without building. You can collapse without adapting. The correction is a mindset shift. Replace sweat and pain metrics with actual performance metrics. Representatives loads. Technique quality. Volume you can recover from. Track what matters, not what just feels dramatic. You don't earn progress through punishment. You earn it through consistency and intelligent stress. Number 11. Your motivation is propped up by stimulus. You can't start training without the right playlist. You need a pre-workout just to walk through the door. The energy drink, the hype video, the 10-minute mental ramp-up, all of it has to be in place before you can touch a barbell. And if one piece is missing, you either skip the session or drag through it. This is stimulus dependency, and it's one of the more subtle signs that your training has lost its foundation. When structure is missing, people use stimulation to create urgency. Music, caffeine, and hype become substitutes for planning and progression. You're not training because you have a system. You're training because you manufacture enough adrenaline to override the fact that you're burnout and directionless. The misinterpretation sounds almost reasonable. I'm just someone who needs high energy. But more often, that need is a symptom, not a personality trait. Sleep debt, inconsistent routine, lack of clear goals. These create the emptiness that stimulation fills. The strongest lifters are often emotionally boring in the gym. They don't need a moment. They don't need the stars to align. They walk in, warm up, and start lifting. Because the structure does the work, not the mood. The correction isn't about removing music or caffeine. It's about building a boring baseline you can execute on your worst day. A warm-up that doesn't require motivation. A first lift started within 5 minutes. A minimum effective session that doesn't depend on how hyped you feel. Consistent programming and manageable intensity beat hype cycles. Every time. That's the boring truth that wins. Number 12. You feel busy in the gym, but directionless overall. You're in the gym 5 days a week. You've tried new splits, new rep ranges, new machines, new hacks you found online. You're always doing something. But the mirror hasn't changed in months. Neither has the logbook. And somewhere underneath all that activity, there's a quiet confusion you don't want to name. This is movement without momentum. The final sign that progress is stalled. You're not lazy. You're not skipping sessions. You're just busy in a way that doesn't go anywhere. Every few weeks, there's a new tweak, a new adjustment, a new supplement, a new reason to believe this time it'll click. But it doesn't click because busyness is a defense mechanism. It's easier to do more than to do the right thing consistently. It's easier to switch programs than to finish one. It's easier to chase novelty than to sit with the discomfort of slow, boring, unglamorous progress. The misinterpretation is almost a badge. I'm doing everything, but direction beats quantity. One focused goal, executed consistently for 12 weeks, will outperform 6 scattered goals executed randomly. Periodization is just a fancy name for this. Plan manipulation to drive adaptation. You pick a priority. You align your training with it. You stay long enough to see results or learn something real. The most dangerous plateau is the one where you're still excited, still engaged, still showing up, because you don't notice you're stuck until the months have already disappeared. Don't let that be your next year. Plateaus aren't punishments. They're signals. Every one of these signs is your body or your habits telling you something has drifted. The weight stopped moving because something stopped working. The fatigue piled up because recovery fell behind. The motivation needed caffeine and music because the structure underneath collapsed. None of this means you failed. It means you've been given feedback. The question is whether you use it. Most people won't. They'll keep grinding, keep adding, keep mistaking effort for progress, and wonder why another year passes with nothing to show for it. But you're here. You listened, and now you know what to look for. So, which sign hit closest? Be honest with yourself. That's where the work starts. If this video helped you see your training differently, subscribe and leave a comment. And if you know someone stuck in one of these patterns, send it to them. Sometimes recognition is all it takes. See you in the next one.